My name is Isaiah. I am 19 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and now I'm shunned.
All right, Isaiah. Wow, very young to be on the show, so I like that. So, how'd you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Was it something you were born into?
Yeah, I was born in, and then it goes back as far as just my grandparents on both sides, mom and dad's side. And that's as far as I'm aware that it ever went back. So,
Okay. Do you happen to have any idea, or did you ever hear stories of why, like your grandparents became Jehovah's Witnesses?
um,
You ever hear that origin story?
really necessarily, my dad's parents, I know, came in the same later in life, probably mid 20s, as my other grandparents did. I know my grandmother was um, over 20 years old, and I think my mom was, I want to say, like maybe three, four, five when they came in. So,
Gotcha. I just like to ask because sometimes people know the origin story, and a lot of times the the beginnings of the cult in a family
mhm.
are when maybe they were in their 20s and they were looking for something, or they have their first kid and suddenly they feel vulnerable and they're looking for certainty, or something's happened to them, or it's a big life change. A lot of times there's some sort of a vulnerability that ends up leading someone to the perceived certainty of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mhm.
So I like to ask that just in case there is something. Um, so for you, you were basically born in. It's all you ever knew. So how did it? What was the worldview that growing up one of Jehovah's Witnesses gave you?
The earliest I can remember was back in elementary school. I remember bits and pieces from school, just experiences and things, getting to school and not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and things as small as that, and being looked so down upon during that time too was a huge thing. I remember I had a close friend in first and second grade, and we had a substitute teacher one time, and I didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I just kind of sat there in my desk, and she looked at me and she got so pissed. I won't ever forget that. And my buddy stood up and he says, "Yeah, he's one of Jehovah's Witnesses. He doesn't do that." And I'm like, wow, like that's nice, somebody defending me for what I believe in and stuff. And
Wow,
it,
that was really sweet of that other kid to do.
yeah, I'd never, and he knew very little. Like I never really told everybody. I remember mentioning stuff briefly, like, basic beliefs and things like that, or, teachings that I was taught, not necessarily beliefs, but teachings for sure. But yeah, birthday parties, you just sit out, and holiday activities, and you sit out. And I was out of the classroom more than I was in during holiday times. Spent most of my
Yeah.
time in the library.
Yeah, it forces you to be different than all the
Yeah,
other kids, right? And most children, you just want to fit in. So
yeah.
it's a very hard thing. Well, let's talk about that. So in school, did you have many friends? Did you fit in, and did you go to regular public school, or were you homeschooled, or at some point?
I went to public school until the end of eighth grade, and then I was homeschooled through them. Then I did an online high school. Graduated in 2017 from high school, but I never really had more. I never really had anybody I could call a close friend or necessarily friends. Everybody was mainly acquaintances, just because I couldn't hang out with them after school, so I didn't really have that connection that everybody else did with everybody. It was just, I remember I got bullied a lot, especially in middle school, but elementary school it started out towards third or fourth grade, just because, not necessarily just religion too, but um, body weight was a big thing for me back then, and stuff like that. So it
Oh, yeah.
was it was hard to make friends in school. Very, very sure of that.
Yeah, hard to make friends, and then you're made to stand out for the religious reasons. But like you said, body weight, whatever. Kids tend to differentiate each other anyway in some very, very cruel ways at times.
Yeah.
Something you said that I think so many other people would agree with, or would say, and I would have too, was that difference between friends. Like I didn't have friends at school. I had acquaintances. And I just wonder, is there anyone else in life other than Jehovah's Witnesses that makes that distinction? Because let's face it, those kids at school, they were your friends. They just weren't friends you could have outside
Yeah.
friendships with, but they were still your friends. They were your school friends, but we
Yep.
weren't allowed to say that because you weren't supposed to be friends with the world, right?
Yeah.
I just doubt anybody else that makes that differentiation.
Yeah.
It's so strange to have to say that.
Yeah, very much. And it makes you feel kind of like gross when you leave almost. At least for me it did, because I had these people that I grew up with, my entire childhood was spent with them, and I didn't view them as friends. I just viewed them as people that were around me during that time. And I kind of regret that big time now, because there's a lot of good relationships I could have had.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they rob us of, because you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable and open to a real relationship. You're always trying to keep them at arm's length, keep your distance from them, stay safe,
Yeah.
because they're so scary.
Hmm.
It's yeah, I think that would be a regret for a lot of people, that we missed out on a opportunity to have roots outside of the organization.
Yeah.
So so that was kind of your school experience a little bit. What was life like at home for you growing up? What was kind of what was the temperature of the home? Were you all a family that was really did you all have family study regularly? Were you all really into it?
I remember the earliest I can remember was having book study during the week too, when we had 3 meetings. I was really young. I don't remember exactly when, but I remember having book study like that. And that was kind of before they started urging us to have more of a family study. I remember the family study came around when I was a little older, probably 10 or 11, and they're kind of, pushing it into, you need to do this at home too. But I can remember going in service quite a bit on the weekends, on Saturdays. Not a whole bunch on Sundays at all, but Saturdays was either an every Saturday thing or every other, and didn't really have an excuse either, because we lived right next door to the group that held service at their house. So it was either you walk over or you feel like you're going to be judged if you don't come out on Saturday. But yeah, it wasn't. We never really did family study at my house. I did. I don't remember really doing it, or at least I don't remember my dad really kind of initiating it. I remember it was always my mom that was kind of like, "Hey, we need to do this. This is something that needs to be done," and he would just kind of like brush it off a little bit or be busy during that. But yeah.
So were you all a family? Was there a lot of pressure internally in your family uh, to really be good Jehovah's Witnesses, or were you all kind of lax and as far
Um,
as a witness family would go?
in the congregation we were a part of, average attendance was, I want to say, like 130, 140 on weekends, on Sundays. So it was a very big congregation, and there wasn't a whole lot of diverse families. Every hall I've been in has been average age of 50 or over. So it's very older congregations for sure. So I can remember just a couple families with kids my age, and you almost felt like if they were younger than you, you'd kind of be like, oh, they're going in service way more than you. You need to step up your game a little bit, because that's all it really is. It's just who can be out in service a little bit more and comment more at the meetings and things like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Did you feel that pressure just from being in the congregation, or did you feel that pressure from your parents? Like, were your parents like, you have to comment every meeting, you have to be regular in service, or was it just the atmosphere of the congregation that pushed you?
The congregation, and mainly my mom. Dad really wasn't too kind of pushy on it. He would try and encourage you a little bit, but it wasn't like you need to do this. But my mom, on the other hand, was, you need to comment at every meetings. You need to be out in service every Saturday. You need to make sure at school you pray before every lunch, and thank Jehovah for what he gave you and stuff like that. So it was very pressured from mom to do such a thing. But yeah,
Well,
that was really about it.
okay, so what was the environment like growing up? Do you have siblings? Were you all a fun family? Did you all go out and do a lot of things or play games, or kind of what was the temperature of the house? Or maybe it wasn't as good as that.
I am an only child to begin with, and my dad kind of rubbed off on me when I was a kid, so we didn't really go out and do a whole lot. He was more the get home from work, stay home kind of guy, which I completely understand now. But yeah, he was mainly didn't really want to do anything after work and would just kind of have his own downtime to unwind and stuff. Mom tried to take me out different places every now and again and try to drag Dad along too, but usually it just ended up being us that would go out and stuff. So we'd have little mom and son date nights, so we'd go out and eat dinner at a restaurant or something like that. But yeah, didn't have any siblings, so it was a very boring life at home, I'd say, to be honest with you. Never really did a whole lot, never really left the house to go hang out with people or anything like that. It was mainly just at home and either alone or near my parents. That was about it.
So it sounds like maybe you didn't have, I mean, you kind of alluded to already that there weren't a lot of other people your age necessarily in the congregation. So did you have friends around in the congregation at all that you could hang out with?
In the city that we lived in, there was our congregation, and then about 20 minutes away from that was a hall that had Spanish, English, and then morning and afternoon. So it was three different congregations in that hall. But I want to say maybe three or four kids my age or right around my age that were in our hall, and then eventually ended up moving and then swapping to that. So I lost everybody that I had gained any sort of closeness to, and it just changed after that for sure.
Gotcha. So then, not having a lot of friends in the congregation that you lived in, just not, it doesn't sound like you had a lot around. I mean, how did you feel about going to the meetings and everything? Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy service at all? Like, if you were kind of bored at home, was that at least something to do? So it was kind of fun based on that.
It was nice to be able to get out of the house and do those things, but I had a lot of social anxiety. And I feel like that rolled over from the bullying aspect. So I was very self-conscious about myself. And so I would always try and be in the back of every group or behind everybody else just to kind of stay out of sight and out of mind kind of thing. So it was a way for me to get out of the house, but I would much rather be at home with that anxiety than be in a huge place with a bunch of people, just glaring at you all the time, because that's all I remember it was. Really.
Glaring at you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of glaring. If you weren't looking at your watchtower while they were doing the study, and you were looking out the window, because we were one of the halls that had windows on each side, and you look out the window of the Kingdom Hall and look at the cars passing by, or you hear a siren go off and it flies past, and everybody's just kind of looking at you as you're looking around. But yeah.
Really, I dealt with a lot of social anxiety as well. I think a lot of people do. And when you think about it, being in that fishbowl environment all the time where everybody really is truly watching you and you're told that other people are watching you, whether it's the world watching you or Jehovah watching you or Satan watching you,
Yeah.
or just the people in the congregation who are watching them. Did you underline your watchtower, and
Yeah.
how many times do you raise your hand to comment? It creates an atmosphere of social anxiety, almost a paranoia, where you're just always afraid that somebody has got their eyeballs on you, and it doesn't
Yeah,
feel
well,
good.
that's what you're taught. I mean, from the earliest I can remember, it was always, do right even when we're not here. My parents would send me off to school, and they'd say that, Jehovah's always watching, and I could not put my mind into that the same way they could at all. Yeah, it did not sit well with me even from the beginning.
No, no, it's not a comfortable thought, really,
No.
to think about a lot of those things. Um, okay, so then how did things progress as you started to get older? So, we're talking about your younger years, but as you start to get older, there's a lot of pressure maybe to get baptized or whatever the case may be. So how did things kind of progress as time went by a little bit?
I remember when I was about 10 or 11, we started, that's when they kind of switched up congregations a little bit too, merged and changed around some stuff. And we had a few families move in. So there were some kids my age, and visiting speakers from the other halls that would come over. And they had families of 4 or 5 kids. And their youngest one baptized was like, like 11 or 12, I think. So just a couple of years older than me. So in my mind, I'm like, wow, they got baptized that young. Like, that'd be so cool. And then you visit their hall and you see them running microphones at 13 and 14, and you're like, wow, that'd be awesome to do. So it was very pressured with the atmosphere that it was in, especially with a lot of the older ones, everybody being baptized already, and stuff like that. So it was very, you felt like you needed to be baptized so that you could be the same level as them, kind of thing, for me at least. My parents never really pushed me to get baptized, but they were very supportive without asking why, kind of thing. So I didn't really have any reason not to. So I ended up getting baptized at 13.
All right, so 2013, you're getting baptized at 13 years old. So now, getting baptized at such a young age, at 13, was it kind of the pressure of just seeing other kids doing this stuff, and you wanted to do, you wanted to handle mics, you wanted to get involved too, or was it did you really truly kind of believe at that time?
Um, I can't really say that I ever believed 100%. I always remember kind of questioning stuff before I got baptized, and then just kind of came to an okay state of mind when it came to things, and was kind of accepting it. I'm like, in my mind, there's no other way to live life. So why wait to do such a thing?
So more of
Why
almost like a practical thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm eventually going to do this, so why not? Let's just do this, right?
Yeah, just get it done now. Get it over with and start now.
It's kind of like, people would say, why do you serve Jehovah? And I just went, well, it's the right thing to do.
That's what I would always say. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because we were just taught that there was like a certain formula or equation. This was the answer. So it's just the answer. So we just do it because we've been told to do it. When you look at that and you see the culty nature of that, we were just taught this is the right way to do things. So you just did it that way. It just never questioned it or thought about it much.
Yeah.
So you got baptized at 13. Did you get to handle microphones? Did you like did that change anything for you?
I remember the day I was getting baptized, so nervously walking the front row of the auditorium and sitting down, and everybody coming up to me and things like that. It was a very small assembly that we had that year, so it was a pretty small hall, assembly hall at least. And I remember sitting down being so nervous, and as soon as I got dunked and came back up, I didn't feel any special Holy Spirit come with me. I didn't feel like I had the desire to really do anything after that. But as far as mics and things, never. I remember I gave my first Bible reading in 2009, and was pretty regular on that. In a big hall, it's kind of hard to do it often. So it's like once every 3 months you get an assignment. And especially there was a lot of kids that were 10 years older than me, give or take. So they were always the ones on mics and things like that. But I think it was the fact that I was never in service enough or didn't have enough hours. And that's why I never was allowed to have microphones and jobs like that or anything. But yeah.
So
not until I
getting
moved out.
baptized didn't really change things for you too much.
No.
Did you? So I know from, did you have to give a prayer any time after that? Because a lot of times that was a big deal when a young brother got baptized. They wanted them to get up and say a prayer.
I've to this day, even before I dissociated, I never gave a prayer on the stage at a hall.
Really?
Never did.
Well, you didn't miss out on much.
Nope.
And I just know, when you're at, let's see, what was that, 14, I guess, and you get baptized, and within the first week or two after getting baptized, you're going to be asked to go up and say a prayer. And it was terrifying, just
Yeah.
absolutely terrifying to have to do that at such a young age. That's a privilege that young brothers are extended to have to get up there and do that. And it's, especially if you have social anxiety, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. I'd have to calm myself and prepare just for my name to be announced to go up to give a Bible reading. And then I'd walk up there and I'm like, everybody's staring at me and going through my mind. And I was shaking and sweaty hands. And I'd get up there on the stage and my knees were weak. And that was every time, even when I was, 18 and 19. And that it was still just, I was never comfortable up there in front of people.
Gotcha.
For sure.
It's again, it's another kind of special circumstance that young Jehovah's Witnesses face, is that you are, a lot of people give the organization credit for making them public speakers or whatever. But again, public speaking wasn't for everyone. And for a lot of people, it's absolute torment to go to meetings and have to do that.
Yeah.
And just a lot of stress that most children will never have to go through.
Yeah.
On that level. So yeah, I understand. So so how did life go then as you progressed through your teenage years? I mean, look, you're 19, you're still a teenager. So
Yeah.
how did things go as life progressed on?
After I got baptized, within a year or so, I really started to kind of, after getting baptized, I felt like I had to do more and put more effort into things. So I would try and go out and service more and things like that. So, and then I could never bring myself to actually do it because, social anxiety, going and knocking on random people's doors and feeling bad if they came to the door in their PJs, knowing damn well you woke them up from their sleep. But yeah, I remember starting to question things a little bit as soon as I got baptized, like why, things like that.
Really?
Things.
What? So getting baptized for you almost changed it the other way. For a lot
Yeah.
of people, they get baptized and it's like, oh, the pressure to do more, be more, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And they follow that path. For you, you got baptized and you're like, what is all this? Or,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. I remember one of the big things that always kind of stuck out in my mind was, whereas I was very big into history and science to a certain degree of past things. So I never did a whole lot of research or things like that, but just questions that kind of came up during watchtowers and things like that. I'd try and dig into. I'd see other brothers and sisters around the hall, looking at a scripture and still looking at their Bible after the scripture's been read, because either they were just looking at it to seem intelligent or they were reading more. And so I started doing that. Started reading, a few paragraphs before that or after that, and kind of seeing like this doesn't really, fit in with what's going on. And yeah, the big question that always stuck with me even to this day is the anointed. That was that just blew my mind, is how do you know who is anointed and how do you know when you're anointed and things like that. And then a few years ago they came out with a watchtower on not questioning who's anointed and things like that. And I'm just like, wow, this kind of bothers me a little bit. My conscience was kind of like, what the hell's going on here?
Isn't that interesting? They would have articles about not questioning anyone who would claim to be anointed, but yet they've also had, I believe it was in a talk where they talked about how, I don't know if it's a talk or a Watchtower article, but anyway, because it's been out since I left, but
Mhm.
I just remember seeing it. They talked about how um, some people think they're anointed because the number keeps going up, right?
Yeah.
The 144,000 number was dwindling. I remember it getting down to like 6,000 or something like that, and now it's at like 12 or 14. I don't know. It's gone the other way.
They just released. I was talking with a buddy of mine yesterday that actually was disfellowshipped a couple of months before I turned in my letter, and we got talking yesterday, and he said something about some not numbers were released in the yearbook, but they came out with something, and there was like 80,000 partakers at the last memorial or something like that. He said it was
What?
way up there, way up there.
I'll have to look
Yeah,
because I know they just released some numbers.
yeah,
But it is funny that the number has gone the wrong way,
yeah.
and they used that dwindling number to point to the end of the
Yep.
world, and now it's going the other way. But they actually, so you said that they had articles talking about how you shouldn't doubt those who profess to be the anointed, but then they also had some sort of talk where they were saying that a lot of people who were professing to be the anointed, it might be mental illness.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And
Wait a
it
minute.
just,
Well, maybe it's all mental illness.
yeah, exactly.
Maybe you're hearing voices or something, and not to make fun of that, but that's sad, and those are things for which maybe you should be seeking help, not being praised for.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not real great. So yeah, it's so that was something that was waking you up, was just that doubt about the anointed.
The anointed, it really started kind of, and it fizzled out so long after that. It's just kind of like something you doubt, but then you kind of put away because you live such a busy life in the organization that stuff just kind of fades out eventually if you don't keep pushing forward and try to understand where that doubt is coming from. But there was things like that, and I was very secluded as a child, so I didn't really have a whole lot of world experience at all. So I never got to see things out, and it was very quiet in our hall. So I never got to hear about somebody getting divorced or things like that, marriage stuff, or somebody being abused, that sort of thing. That was nothing really I heard of until I got older.
Gotcha. So let's see. So you're questioning things. Was there something that precipitated the change in your educational path where you went from being, in regular public school to being homeschooled? Was there something that happened around that time or anything?
Two things. The main leading factor, I want to say back in 2014 is when I was in eighth grade, somewhere in there. And my grandfather had a heart condition, went into the hospital and had a double heart bypass. And my mother was taking care of him while he was in the hospital. So she pulled me out of school. I didn't have a way to get to school, and the hospital was 3.5 hours away. So I spent a week and a half in the hospital, like half sleeping in the hospital, half in a hotel with my mother while he was in there. So she's like, yeah, we'll just pull you out and finish eighth grade, and then we'll see what goes from there. But I remember being bullied so much, I would come home and I wanted to be homeschooled from the very beginning. I remember asking my parents back in like third grade if I could be homeschooled, just so I could get away from the whole bad world, because that's all the world was terrible. So that was definitely a leading factor, me trying to ask them to get put into homeschooling situation. But mainly it was just the problem with my grandpa in the hospital that got me out.
Wow. So that kind of facilitated, you getting out of that school
Hmm.
situation. Just really sad that as a third
Hmm.
grade kid, even, for all those years you were asking to be homeschooled because the bullying was that bad.
Yeah.
It was brutal. And it's also sad, or made even sadder by the fact that we were taught that the world would persecute us, and
Yeah.
this evil, bad world, and so it just kind of reinforces that narrative for you, probably being a kid,
Yeah.
and a Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. I remember it was younger playground school age. A group of guys came up to me and started picking on me, and it was in the middle of winter, so you're geared up for the snow and out on the playground. And I remember they pushed me to the ground, started talking to me. I don't remember what all they were saying, but they were just picking at me, and then started kicking snow in my face on the ground and things like that. And I remember I almost swore at them. I almost did. I couldn't bring myself to do it because I'd be bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. And I remember coming home that day and telling my mom that I almost swore at somebody at school. And she's like, "Oh, you're. I'm glad you didn't, because you're setting such a good example for other kids in case there's another witness." I was the only witness in my entire school, all growing up in elementary and middle school, and so it was very, very lonely in school. But yeah, she was just like, you're setting a good example for the teachers and for the kids that you're different. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I bet it didn't feel like such a good thing at the time.
It did not. It did not at all.
No. Certainly didn't help anything. So as you progressed on, so now you've gotten out of the school situation.
Yep.
You're a baptized young man. So how do things go then? As you go into homeschool, or what happens after that?
Well, I started my first job when I was 14. I worked part-time after school from like 4 in the afternoon to 7 o'clock at night. Legal laws, you can't work past 7 when you're under 16 or whatever. So I started working when I was 14. Haven't had more than a week off since then, up to this day. Just constantly working. But I remember getting a little more freedom after you start your first job, even though, I wasn't able to drive yet. So mom had to drop me off at work and pick me up and things like that. So I was doing homeschooling through the school that I went through. And it was very, I don't know, it was very different from what I was expecting homeschool to be. They gave you a book and you read over the book and made your own homework for it. And that's how you passed. And I only had about half a year left of 8th grade. So I finished that. And then ended up doing homeschooling through an online high school, Penn Foster. You've heard of it.
Yeah, I think my sister went through Penn Foster.
Yeah. Yep. So I did Penn Foster all 4 years of high school in a year and 1 month. So I busted ass to get that done, just because I was ready to just work, save up money, and go from there. But started working and doing homeschooling, and I honestly cannot say I remember much of the online schooling. It was multiple question tests and things like that. So I was trying to put my focus on work and spiritual things, as you're taught. So
for a lot of people who are homeschooled, that's an excuse to go out and service more and things like that. Were you getting more busy in the congregation, or were you just getting more busy with work?
More busy with work, I can say. And I feel like that was kind of my saving grace in the end of it, was because I was doing school maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and I do just a couple hours every time. So it was very easy for me to do that on the side of working. My second job, I started working, I don't know, it was when I turned 16. I started working at like 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon every day of the week except for Sundays. And that was just my normal schedule. So it was definitely exhausting in the sense that I didn't have much motivation when the weekend come to do anything else besides rest or take time for myself. But you weren't allowed to do that. So you get up and go, you go in service, you go to the meetings, you comment, and yeah, you just try and live life like that. But it was challenging.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Really.
you shouldn't be that young and being burnt out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
kind of sets you up for some workaholism later in life because, for a lot of us, work was an escape. It was a way out. I know for myself as well. I didn't want to be home. Last thing I wanted
Hmm.
to be was with my family. They were
Yeah.
terrible. So I would just work every day after school as much as I could.
Hmm.
And then the other days I didn't work. We were at meetings. So you just set yourself up for a life though, where, school all day, work all night, or meetings. The weekends, you're not even really having fun a lot of times. You're tired or you're at meetings or service or whatever. And it just kind of sets you up in a way that you're always used to just, you have to run, 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 run all the time. And then, later on in life, and you may find this later, you have a hard time letting your hair down or just chilling out
That's
or
how it is right now.
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's how it's been. As I said, I've been working since I was 14, and for the
Yeah.
last 5 years, I haven't had. I took my first vacation, uh, like last fall in 2020. So that was my first 1 week vacation since I started working, and that was a big kind of relief. But halfway through the vacation, I was like, man, I want to get back to work. You just feel like you need to do something like that.
Yeah. And that workaholism you come by honestly because so many things were skewed and out of control that of course that's going to be too as a way of escaping, right?
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us, that can be an issue.
Yeah.
Um, Good for you noticing it at this age. At least it's a thing
Yeah. Yeah.
to work on and try to find some moderation around. But so, all right, so you're just running and running and running. You're working, you're doing your school and crushing it in a year and a half, you said?
A year and 1 month.
A year and 1 month,
Yep.
so that you could just crush 4 years of high school so that you could work. And
Yep.
it's just interesting and telling, too, that you did that so that you could work and save up money. You didn't do
Hmm.
that so you could pioneer.
Yeah. I
Just,
I always I had a goal of pioneering, and that goal
okay.
was kind of like, um, my mom saying, "Oh, now that you have this time, you can, pioneer." And I remember at my graduation party, which was more of just like an open house kind of thing. It was really small. Um, and I remember having family that weren't witnesses come in, and they're like, "So, what are you going to do now?" And they're like, "Are you going to college? Anything like that?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know yet. We'll see when the time comes." And I'd have witnesses come up to me, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing now? Are you going to pioneer? You going to maybe try and shoot for Bethel or something like that?" And I said, "Oh, that'd be amazing. I'd love to be able to pioneer, but I just work so much. Working 40-hour weeks as a 16-year-old, and that was just exhausting as is. I couldn't even imagine pioneering at the same time. That would be devastating to my mental health for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That would have been really tough. I like that contrast, the worldly family coming in and
Hmm.
thinking, well, this kid's obviously freaking smart. He's done with a high school at 16 years old. Let's get him to college. And then
Yeah.
everybody else saying, oh, that's the witnesses coming in saying, oh, now you have all this time to dedicate to Jehovah.
Yep.
Um, so, all right. So we're at 16. You're 19 now and you're talking to me. So,
Yep.
so clearly things didn't go so well as far as Jehovah's Witnesses went for you. So how did things change in those last few years?
Well, I always remembered kind of not necessarily being 100%. I always remember living the double life kind of thing. Even from a younger age, I'd try and have people that I could be friends with outside, and I'd have to hide my phone from my parents and things like that when I was 14 or 15, and trying to create those relationships with people outside of the organization because I didn't have anybody in the organization my age. I don't. I loved some of the older brothers and sisters in our hall because they were genuinely kind and amazing to me growing up, but I just can't connect with somebody that much older than me right away. I needed that close age group that had things in common with me that liked to do certain things. So that was a big factor in me trying to reach out and find people in general. But I turned 16, got my license, worked even more. I was driving around everywhere. And then within a couple months, I went to a course to get my motorcycle license, got a motorcycle, spent all of my free time on that. That was my absolute escape from life. I mean, that was the one thing I could do was put on the helmet and go for a 2-hour ride and just be free, not have to worry about, what am I doing wrong? I have to go in service tomorrow. I have to go to the meeting tomorrow. This is just, it was time for myself to unwind and realize there's more to life than just work, home, sleep. And that was a big factor in keeping a motorcycle at such a young age too, was just the freedom. But I ended up meeting a small group of riders, and they were all around my age at that time. They were like 19, 20, somewhere in there. And
A gang, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a
Quite a
gang.
gang.
They were terrible people. Absolutely terrible. They invited me out to dinner and to go riding, and just gruesome people. But yeah, I got pretty close to them, and I'd get off of work at 5 p.m. and I'd meet them in town at 6 o'clock after I got home, dropped off my stuff, changed clothes. I'd run out on the bike, and I just kind of, at that point, I was not allowed by my parents to be out past dark. As if the sun was setting, I better be in the driveway, or I was going to be in trouble.
Now,
And
what about in the winter when it's dark at like
oh well, no, that didn't
6?
matter, because that did not matter. If it was dark, I was home. That's how it was.
Okay.
That's how I was raised. So it was about 2 or 3 hours I got to do anything if I wanted to on my way home from work. And yeah, so I met them, started riding around with them. I'd go out after work for a couple hours, and I just started kind of pushing the limits after that, seeing how far I could get. I'd get home and my parents would be like, what'd you do? And I'm like, oh, I went out riding with some friends, and we had dinner out at a restaurant. Oh, really? Did you? And it was very, I felt really judged just for kind of, doing something I enjoyed, by my parents. My dad was a little more lenient with it. He was very lenient growing up in general too, with a lot of stuff. I remember I'm big into video games and things like that. So the choice of games was very particular with my mother, but with my father, it was, you're baptized now at 13. You have the right to make your decision, what bothers your conscience and what doesn't, which really, really opened my eyes to a certain degree in a good way. But also, I feel like it kind of conflicted a lot of things in my mind at that age. Like, if this doesn't bother me, why can't I do it? If it's wrong. But yeah, so dad was a little more okay with me going out and staying out a little later with people, even necessarily they didn't know. But mom was like, you don't know these people. You have to be careful. Bad association, bad things can happen, and you could be put in a situation you don't want to be put in, and things like that. But yeah, I rode with them for a long time. I'd come home at like 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night after some nights, and I could definitely tell mom was not okay with that. But dad was like, as long as you're being safe and you get home all right, if you're going to be later, text us, let me know, that kind of thing. So he was very lenient and gave me a lot more freedom than my mom did, for
I was
sure.
gonna say he sounds almost reasonable.
Yeah. He was very, I
Compared
feel
to
like mom was very overprotective just because I was an only child. And, to this, to up until a couple months ago, I was absolutely her number one baby. I was her baby boy. That's what she always called me, always. So
it's yeah, so we'll talk about that change. So you're just riding around with your friends on motorcycles and having dinner.
mhm,
Was just terrible things.
absolutely.
Very worldly. So what leads to you leaving? I mean, it sounds like you were, you had had some questions, But you were a baptized young member of the congregation, and it doesn't sound like you weren't running off and getting wild and crazy or something.
Yeah.
You weren't off, um, doing the things that Jehovah's Witnesses would think you would be doing
Hmm.
that would drag you away. So what is it that was so different?
Well, go back a few years after I got baptized. I started working at 14. I worked so much. I remember there was a couple, it must have been more than a couple months. I had no idea up until recently. But I was actually inactive for like a solid year, I guess, after I was baptized, from probably 14 to 15 or 15 to 16, somewhere there when I was working a lot. And I didn't find that out till my ex-girlfriend in the organization, her parents pulled my card to make sure I was fit to date their daughter. So that was very weird to me. And it kind of caught me by surprise, because I had never, had anything that was, I had to go talk to the elders for or anything like that. So there was nothing that I knew of. But yeah, I guess I was inactive for about a year or so. And now that I look back on it, I can definitely tell that I was kind of looked down upon growing up. And I think if I'm correct, my father is inactive as well and has been for a very long time. But I'll get to that a little later. But he just doesn't do a whole lot, but is 100% a firm believer. And that confused me and conflicted my mind when I was trying to come up with a decision what I was going to do. In the organization and things like that. But yeah, so I was inactive for a while, I guess, and jumped to when I was 18 years old. I moved out in less than a month of me turning 18. I had money saved up and found a house in a small town that was owned by a sister that had been vacant for a couple of years, and she moved into a new home, and it was just her parents lived next door, and they didn't want to sell the house to anybody unless they were a witness. That's what it was. So it sat here empty for multiple years, and my aunt and uncle live up in this area, and my grandparents do now as well. And they were looking around for places for me if I wanted to move up closer to family, because I'd only get to see my cousins and aunt and uncle maybe once or twice a year growing up until I was about 17 or 18. So my aunt texted me. She's like, "Hey, there's a sister that I know that has a house. If you're interested in it, we can see if she'll rent it out to you." And so I rented this place for about a year. Moved up here, and yeah, got out of the house at 18, which was definitely an eye opener. But also in that time, back up a little bit, when I was 17, my mother actually got disfellowshipped, which came out of the blue to our entire family. It hit me really, really hard, just because at that point I was a pretty firm believer, and it was that age where you're like, I can continue with this or I can end this when you turn 18 and you move out. Um, and I'm like, for mom, I'm gonna continue this, and that's really what I think pushed me um, to do a lot. But I can remember she was disfellowshipped for about 9 months. And when the Saturday morning, she told us what was going on. She woke me up and she was like, "Hey, I'm going to talk to the elders and this and this and this, and I'm going to be disfellowshipped and things like that." And that came by a humongous surprise. It was very, very, very out of the blue. But I can remember sitting in on an elders meeting, them kind of talking to us about what's going to go on from here after they had made their decision. And one of the things that really, really, really disgusted me was they told me, because I still live at home and I'm a baptized brother, I have a choice to communicate with my mom. They told me it's up to me if I want to have a relationship with my mother at home just because she's disfellowshipped. And that really, really did not sit well with me. That at that point, I'm like, I cannot be in this congregation anymore with the way those elders just were, treating my mother, who was sitting right there, told me that. And I'm just like, I can't imagine the position she would be in to lose absolutely everything like that. in a heartbeat and
Mm.
be told that your son has a choice whether or not he wants to even talk to you while he's living at home.
Wow. That's such a contrast, and it's absolutely true that they believe this way, what you said. But such a contrast to the public version that they put out there that, normal family relationships may remain. No, they don't.
No.
Uh, you were told that you have a choice. You can continue contact with your mother or not in her own damn house, in
Yeah.
in the house that's hers.
Yeah. And
You
then
know?
they also told me, they said not only if I wanted to have communication I could, but that I wasn't going to be able to go out and have lunch with her after a meeting. And I give props to my mom for being disfellowshipped, and she never missed a meeting. I mean, she tried very hard to get back. She sent in 3 letters, I do know, to be reinstated. And she's a very firm believer. All my family is, and it destroyed me. But um, it really caught me off guard more than anything. 2 older men sitting there telling me, I have the choice and that I shouldn't go out and have lunch in public with my mom. I I just did not agree with that at all. I don't see how anybody could ever make that decision not to do so.
It's it goes against the weaponizing of the family.
Yeah.
It goes against every natural inclination. Jehovah's Witness. Oh, what's the scripture? It's the signs of the last days. It was 2 Timothy 3:1-5, and it's like no natural affection.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, like you're
The only
telling me not to love my mom,
yeah,
to just be like, I could give her, give or take my mom,
yeah,
whatever, and she can go eat lunch by herself in her shame.
yeah.
It's
That
messed up.
yeah, it bothered me so much, and I
Yeah.
think that started to wake me up, but it also kind of reinforced some things as well, which when I look back at it, it's so confusing because I moved out and moved 2 hours away from my parents to move up here, and I started reaching out more in the congregation. I started, I hadn't give a Bible reading in probably 3 years. And so I'm like, I moved up here, had my cards transferred, which again, moved up here in July. I didn't get my cards until January 1st when they actually got them. So I wasn't able to do anything until that card was transferred, which is the stupidest thing. And it was emailed, by the way, too. It wasn't a physical copy, it was emailed. So
They
that
could have done
really
that
confused.
in 15 minutes, just
Yeah,
signing it, scanning it, whatever they have to do.
exactly. It was the stupidest thing. But so I moved up here and started reaching out more in the congregation. And before the coronavirus hit, I was doing microphones and Bible readings and things like that pretty often, and helping out in the sound booth and all that. So I had privileges now, which felt really good. And that something that I always wanted when I was a kid, but never had or was given the opportunity to. So that felt like, wow, I'm being reinforced, a new congregation, a new me, a new start. I get family that I haven't been with forever, and it feels really good. And so that kind of reinforced it a little bit. But in the back of my mind, it was just kind of like, these questions I still have, and they started coming up a little heavier. And I started to kind of reach. It was very hard because my family is very, very, very in. Like my aunt and uncle and stuff. My uncle was an elder and stepped down, and is, I'm assuming, working his way back to that point now. But it would be very hard for me not to go out in service on Saturdays when I moved up here, because they were always like, "Oh, you're going to come in service with us on Saturday, right?" And I'm just like, I need time to myself, working 7 to 5, Monday through Friday, 40 to 50 hour weeks. As soon as I moved up here, paying for a house and stuff, it was exhausting. But yeah, they were always, you're gonna come out and service with us, and then I'd get a text from my mom, you're gonna go out and service with your aunt and uncle this weekend, and things like that. And
Now, was your mom reinstated at this point?
she was reinstated in, let's see, I'm trying to think here. So she was disfellowshipped for 9 months. It was probably March of 2019. I couldn't handle being at home and dealing with my conscience telling me it's wrong to talk to your mom, but it's your fucking mom. Like that. And so I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I just need to escape. And so I left, and then she got reinstated. I want to say it was really probably the end of February of 2020. I think. Yeah, it would have been like right at 9 months, or it might have been end of 2000. I can't remember exactly when.
I was just wondering, because she was encouraging you to go out and service. Was she still disfellowshipped? Because yeah, there you go.
She was too. She was very, and that's what she's like. You're setting a good example for me and keeping me going. And she told me that.
Oh wow, that's a lot of pressure too.
Yeah, it was a big thing. She told me not the only reason, excuse me, but she said one of the main reasons she kept going is because she saw me thriving to get these privileges and to do all this stuff. And I felt like there was such a weight on me. Like the choice my mother had to come back or not, knowing damn well she was going to come back. But just the fact that me, who was not in it wholeheartedly, but only doing it to please people, was really, really hard. And it put me in a state of mind that was like, I'm only doing this blindsided so I can, make other people happy and keep other people going. And that didn't sit well with me either.
And can I say, and I mean no disrespect by that.
Yeah.
You're also just an 18, 19-year-old kid handling all this. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I know, you're doing a lot of adult things and you are a badass for being able to handle all this, but you're doing this all at such a young age where you're not, you haven't been given the chance to go out and live your own life. There's all these, enmeshed, intertwined aspects of you and your mom and the family and the cults and all this stuff. That's a lot for a person of any age to have to handle. And that's, it's remarkable that you've been able to, but also just, at that age, it's just so unfair. It's very unfair.
Yeah. I feel like now I was robbed of childhood completely, and I'm upset at that. But I also feel like the age that I am mentally, to a certain degree, is like, I don't want to do those things that I missed out on now as a child. It's too late for me, I feel like. And so it's kind of just like, I just got to keep going. And that's exhausting as well. But
you'll find, I mean, you've got to survive before you can thrive. And I'm sure you've got a lot to work through, but you'll find some of that joy that you missed. There's things you got to do to get there.
Yeah, for sure.
But man, I'm just sorry that you had to deal with that at that age. So all right, so you're living where you live. You got your house. You got all your stuff. You're going out in service. You're exhausted. And how does this all shake out?
Well, shortly after my mom was reinstated, what first happened, I moved up here and was told to stay away from a member in the congregation. Immediately when I moved up here, I was told to stay away from this sister, mind you, mid-20s sister. I was told to stay away. She's bad association. Do not stay with her. I'm told by my family. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? That doesn't seem too right, because this sister was a pioneer. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. And then a couple months after that, not thinking anything of it, just minding my own business, she was removed as a pioneer, or, they announced this sister is no longer a pioneer. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then at the same meeting, same announcement string was, and her father is no longer an elder. And I got thinking, and I'm like, okay. So I was told by my close family not to associate with this person. And she gets removed as a pioneer, and her father's no longer an elder. A few weeks later, that's when my mom is reinstated. And she has a conversation with my dad, I guess, and had the whole family meet up, not us kids, my cousins and I. And my mom said that she was abused when she was a kid, and she was 16 or 17. Around then, she was sexually abused by a family member. And that, finding that out was just a kick in the nuts at minimum. It explained the reason why a lot of things happened a certain way growing up, and the overprotectiveness and things like that. And the fact that my mother is in her 40s now, and she didn't make that knowledge of even my father until the last year, 2 years. She held that in for so long. And the backstory behind that was, it was found out, and my mother was told to keep silent. The elders did not remove the brother, who it was, and they did not disfellowship him. He was not removed from the congregation. Nothing like that. It was knowledge known by the elders. The elders told my grandmother that it needed to be reported, or that it could be reported. It was up to her to report it to the authorities. And my grandma did not. She kept it hidden and secret with my grandfather. They both knew and kept it hidden. And my mother was told to stay quiet about it, not tell anybody ever that this happened. And then when she did, it threw up the biggest shitstorm in the family I had ever seen. My mother just started talking to my grandmother in the last few months, even since the time she was disfellowshipped. When she told my father, it came out to the family. So it was about a year, almost 2 years, she didn't talk to my grandmother just because of this whole situation. So yeah, that was a real blow to the whole family situation, for sure. Because I was conflicted mentally. This is my grandmother, my family, but also what she did, I cannot, forgive. I can't. To my mother, I cannot forgive that. So it was very conflicting in that sense, that I don't want to be around this person, but they're my family, not doing well in health. I want to be around them, to be around them, but I just can't handle it. So it was always conflicting, to show love to a family member that, I'd missed a lot out on, or, do what seemed right in my mind and just not want anything to do with them. And so that was very hard, for sure. And then shortly, within 2 weeks after finding this out, my cousin had told me that he was abused as a kid for 7 years. And he is not even 18 years old yet. And it was going on since he was probably 8 or 9, up until his current age, by that sister that was removed as a pioneer. And that really, really did not sit well with me after the fact, knowing that she was only removed as a pioneer, a slap on the wrist, and her father was removed as an elder. And the emotional trauma that he has faced since then due to this has just, it's very blatant to me, seeing the way he is, and his family doesn't really understand why he acts the way he does because of that. They don't understand, the factor of it. And so it's very hard for him to be normal in a sense, just because of that fact of him being abused and things like that.
Well, yeah,
So
he's gonna need help.
yeah, yeah, and he's the only one in the family that still talks to me, just because he's kind of leaning in, leaning out on the fence kind of thing right now. But that was a really big factor of me not being okay with it, having to see this sister every single meeting and going out in service and knowing what happened to him is absolutely fucking disgusting. Just, I can't fathom it. It just seems like a
You ever have
no-brainer.
to work out in service with her?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
She would go
man.
out in service, and she was, yeah.
And for those who probably don't understand, or I'm trying to grasp all the players in this as well. So the father was taken down as an elder then, probably just because his daughter was the
Yes.
one who did this, right?
Yeah.
So he's not handling his family. He's not
No. Yep.
keeping them in line. So therefore, he must be taken down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So he essentially gets the same punishment she gets,
Yep.
which is the deletion of a title.
Yep.
And your cousin who was abused by her, did anything happen to him? Like, because sometimes you can be the abuse victim and be reproved or disfellowshipped or.
He was not baptized at the time that it came out.
Okay.
So nothing happened to him. Nothing that I was aware of. I mean, he had the same privileges as me in the congregation still up to this day. He'd run mics and things like that. So nothing that I can think of, unless it was privately reproved and done away with.
Oh, really? He'd run mics and stuff, and he wasn't baptized? Interesting.
Up until he got baptized, he started running mics, which was shortly after I was allowed to. So
okay.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting.
But it came out to us, and then within a few months, he got baptized. So I'm assuming nothing really happened in that whole situation with him, at least. But
I feel for everybody involved. I mean, as far as your cousin, your mom, what happened to her, that's for you. I'm sure it was hard for your dad to hear, as some of the stuff as well. It's just all organization absolutely hides pedophiles.
Yeah,
absolutely do. And so you've seen it, and so you watch all this. All of these revelations are coming out at the same time
within months of me moving here. Just in the last year, life has been such a whirlwind of emotions and things, and yeah.
So so all this comes out, and so what do? How do you handle it?
I stayed quiet about a lot of it, just not really doing a whole lot. It did not sit well with me, obviously, what was going on and the things that I knew and things that were avoided. And so I'm like, this organization is just terrible. I mean, there's no way this can be the one organization God handles and allows this all to happen. Because, those tracks of, does God allow bad to happen? No, it's Satan's fault. Satan is the ruler of this system of things right now and all that. And it's just like, but how in the hell do you get to that conclusion that God can't do anything? They talk about, Bethel being built, which I went to after my graduation, by the way, too, which led into me wanting to reach out more for some apparent unknown reason. But they talk about how you could see Jehovah's hand in the matter of, being built with the materials and the time frame they were given and things like that. But they teach that God doesn't do miracles anymore. So where are you getting the fact that he can physically help you with, some sort of force? But that doesn't really make any sense to me.
Yeah, Jehovah can help them, when they're constructing Bethel, Jehovah can help them get a good deal on lumber,
Yeah.
but he can't do anything about your mom or cousin, being raped or molested or
Yeah.
whatever, right? He, it, it, the mental gymnastics that it takes to make that equation work is really, really something.
Yeah. Yeah. So the organization really didn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
After, I don't know, probably about since 9 months ago. So it started, I would say that's when I started waking up. I wasn't fully woke up at that point, but it was definitely damn near there after finding that out. I was still a believer that, yeah, I was still a believer in God. I'm now atheist. I have no reason to believe otherwise. And I it just seems so weird to me within the last year all of this has happened, and I've come to this conclusion, and it seems real fast. Like I was definitely very fast from starting to wake up to being woke and then turning in a letter like immediately. It's crazy to me that happened, but it's the only way I could see anything right being done.
So what is that path? And so, I mean, not necessarily the path to atheism or whatever,
Mhm.
but what's the path to? So you learn all this. You had your doubts since the time you were 13 and got baptized.
Mhm.
You've had some doubts. You've had some questions, seen some things, and then for a lot of people, we see these things, we put these things up on a shelf, and eventually we put enough up on the shelf, the metaphorical shelf breaks and it all comes crashing down. So you're putting things on the shelf. Here you move, you're finding out all of these horrible things in the organization. So that's going to make you see the organization a certain way or doubt the organization. Did you start consuming any information? Did you start doing any research? Was there anything that helped you to then break down even more of what you were involved in?
Big time, big time. I came across in amongst this. I was like, if I don't truly 100% put myself in this, what's the harm? If it's the one true religion, what's going to be the harm of going to these websites and looking up things, that kind of stuff. First website I visited, JW Facts. Within 10 minutes of opening it, I was shaking and sweating, nervous that I was going to be struck by lightning in the instant that I opened it. I was looking over my shoulder. I live alone. I was looking over my shoulder, one headphone off, trying to figure out if somebody was going to knock on my door and find me looking at this. Never happened. And so I started reading and reading and reading. And the things that I took in that first 30 minutes of being on there, and the real life proof of things, from old publications directly photocopied to the calculations of 607 versus 587, and just that was one thing that really confused me. But the amount of information that JW Facts offers, and the historical evidence, you've got the reports of the archaeologists, digging things up and finding the age. That was like, holy shit, this is right there in front of me. I have this information and it's true. I mean, it's not something that's debatable. This is something that is known fact. And so I spent, I want to say, probably 6-7 days, about a week, on JW Facts every day after I got off work, while I was at break at work, reading and just understanding what the hell this organization actually was. And then learning about ARC and all that thing with the whole pedophilia and abuse cases, it it yeah, it did not sit well with me at all. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be a part of an organization that allows this to happen, that changes their mind on teachings. Like, if we're God's one organization and we're being directed by him, what the hell is happening? I don't get that at
Yeah,
all.
if you can take the whole thing down, like, because you mentioned 607, so Jehovah's Witnesses say that they were chosen then in 1919. I can't remember why they say in 1919 specifically, but that's what they say. And it's like, but if 1914 is wrong, especially if it's off by at least 20 years, easy, then there's no 1919. You're not chosen. It's wrong. Like, you see that um, the foundations of the religion hinge, because they designed it to hinge on these certain dates, right? And they have been wrong all along up until then. But anyway, they designed it to hinge on 1914. If you can eradicate 1914, then Jehovah's Witnesses are just bullshit. And it's not the truth. Just like the whole concept of original sin in the Bible. If there was no Adam and Eve, and we have archaeological proof that the Bible timeline is wrong on all that. So, if there were people long before an Adam and Eve would have existed 5,000 years ago, and there's no Adam and Eve, then there's no original sin, and there's no need for a redeemer. And what the hell is all of this, right?
Yeah.
And so you just see things crumble so quickly. And it's shocking, isn't it, when you see it all come crashing down very quickly.
That week that I started reviewing information, I, not even over exaggerating, got about 2 or 3 hours of sleep at night. That first week. The fact of, this is, my entire life being, my entire history as a child being just thrown out the window by this factual information. And my conscience was very, very, very being tossed about, and trying to figure out, like, can I believe this? Is it true? You go through that denial stage, and I could never deny it fully. I'm like, this all makes sense. This is something that is now a choice of what I'm going to do with it, and how am I going to go from here. So I did a lot of research and watched every Lloyd Evans video he has on his channel up to this date. And I still watch his videos, and I listen to your podcast, and it just really helps me affirm that decision that I made, that what I'm doing is right. I have not regretted viewing JW Facts or Lloyd Evans videos or this podcast or my letter of disassociation being turned in. I have not figured out why it would be a wrong idea to do so. It's been affirmed to me over and over, like, this is the right decision I've made.
Yeah. And, there is, let's say that a lot of times there is some doubt as you're thinking about this stuff, right? Because we've been told, in your case, let's say for 19 years, you're told this is the truth. Just like the sky is blue, right? You're told, like, this is just the fact, and you've believed it. And so it's hard, even when you see the evidence for it, it's hard not to, but what if they're right? Am I wrong? Because it's confusing.
Yeah.
Even when you see it in black and white, it's confusing, because it's like, everyone I've trusted, everything that I've known and everything that I've done has revolved around this. Now I'm saying it's all a lie. What the heck? And so let me ask you, so you, like me, made a choice to write a disassociation letter.
Yep.
So why did you take that step? What led to that, and what was that like for you? Because I remember writing mine. I remember what that scenario was like. I've talked about it on the podcast. What was it like for you as you're waking up more and more to all of this stuff? What leads you to the path of writing that letter, and what's it like?
Yeah, I was trying to weigh out options in a sense of if I stay in this organization to continue to have my family, because as soon as I found that information, I hate to say it, but I accepted the fact that everybody was going to leave me behind in the dust. I knew that from the get go,
I
and
did too.
I knew that was going to happen. And it was just something that it's either I make the best decision for me, or I make the decision to lie and to just continue with this lie that's around me every day. And the amount of stress that caused me for, because I woke up and it took me 4 months to come to the decision to turn in my letter after the fact of, researching and just thinking and weighing out my options and trying to figure out a situation that I'm going to be comfortable in life to completely start over, you know. And I actually have a coworker who is in his 50s, and I kind of broke this down for him when I started researching stuff. And I'm like, he's not really religious, but he believes, in God and things like that. So he is kind of like, yeah, this is, what we believe and things like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is what, I was taught and all this, and going through stuff. And he's like, what in the fuck is this? He's like, the the deeper teachings are very hard for some people to grasp. For example, 607, like that. When you're taught that, you're just like, oh, that's a date. You don't question it. You don't go into more research of it. It's in the Bible. It says right there. That's what they teach. So it doesn't really settle like that with me. I am a person to continue digging after I'm told something, to really think about what I'm learning, to know if it's 100% true or not. And so I did all this digging and came up to him and kind of described some of the things and the teachings. And he's like, this is stupid. Like there's no reason this should be even taught remotely. He says, this isn't Bible standards. This isn't anything. And 3 months before, or 2 months before I put in my letter, I started growing out my beard. And I was getting the most dirtiest, snarkiest remarks and looks from everybody, family and all. And you get that, oh, tugs on your beard. What's this? You letting it grow? Did you forget to shave? That kind of thing. And that's what really kind of, stops people from thinking on their own, because you're being pushed to think a certain way, to be in line with everybody else. And you're not individual by any means. And so that was one of the main things I brought up to my coworker. He's like, so you're not allowed to have a beard? I said, no, I'm not allowed to have a beard. He says, well, where does that say in the Bible? I said, absolutely nowhere. I said, there is no Bible evidence of facial hair. He says, well, didn't Jesus have a beard? And I said, yeah, he did. In all the publications, Jesus had a nice clean cut beard, and some of the apostles and everything. And he's like, well, then what's the deal? And it's so weird getting an outside perspective on things from being so indoctrinated and not having a clear conscience and a clear mind, and just a regular person saying, there's something you need to do here. There's some checking up or anything. And so the more I started talking to him a little bit about stuff, he's like, so what are you going to do? And I was really debating on turning in my letter or just kind of letting it go, because there's no way I could fade out with my family. There's absolutely no way with as in as they are and stuff like that. So he's like, well, you need to weigh out some options. Like what happens if you don't? What happens if you do? And I said, well, if I do, I'm going to be shunned by my entire family, without a doubt. And he says, and it actually made me cry the day he told me this, but he said, my wife and I are always here for you after the fact. If your parents shun you, he said, if they shun you, you're always welcome through my door. And if you ever need to talk to somebody in that way, you come talk to me. And somebody that, I've only known for a year working with, not even, doing anything outside of work, just being at work with them and giving me that option just really, really, really helped me. Very loving. And you could really see that the world is not such a terrible place. There are people who care and love you unconditionally for who you are as a person, not for your beliefs.
Yeah, and what you also see is that the flip side of that, the things that we were taught, what we would see in the world, the false love and things like that. Those are the things that we had inside the organization.
Yeah.
The organization isn't the squeaky clean place it purports to be, nor is the world the debauched, horrible place that Jehovah's Witnesses, purport it to be.
Yeah.
We're all humans, and what a beautiful human moment for that guy to say, "Hey, man, my wife and I, we got you. If you need somebody to talk to, uh, that's amazing. What a beautiful gesture by that person, and
Yeah.
what a contrast, sadly, to the realities of the other side." So is that what made you, so did you decide to start writing your letter at that point, or?
At that point, I kind of told myself, you're going to be fine. You've got people outside who love you, who are going to be next to you no matter what happens. And then I'm like, yes, I'm going to lose my family, but if they choose to love me as a parent or guardian should love you, then you shouldn't have to worry about these things. And I said, that's just not right. And I'm like, I'll be all right, going through this and stuff like that. So that definitely pushed me to the point where I'm like, I'm going to write the most simplest letter to this disgusting organization who has taken my entire childhood away from me and is trying to take the rest of my life away from me. And I ended up, through the coronavirus, nobody's at the Kingdom Hall locally. So I'm like, well, I don't have anybody's address. I can't send it. So I ended up sending my letter through email to one of the elders in the congregation. And I sent it on a Saturday morning at about 8 o'clock in the morning while I was at work. And that coworker that told me he'd always be there was there with me when I sent it. And me shaking in my fucking skin, sending this email, 10, 11 o'clock rolls around, haven't heard anything back. And I'm like, okay. So I end up texting the elder and said, hey, did you get my email? He responds, no. And I said, okay, sent it. And then I copied the email, which consisted of, to whom it may concern, I no longer want to be associated with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I want this announced at the next meeting, please. And then signed it and texted it to him. And so I turned in my letter of disassociation through text to an elder, along with the email. And that was on a Saturday, and it was announced on Tuesday, the next Tuesday after that. But the day before I turned in my letter, I called my father, and my mother was actually up here in this area spending the night with my aunt. And I called my dad at about 9 o'clock at night and told him that I was going to be turning in my letter of disassociation. And we were on the phone till about 1:30 in the morning, talking things through. And he was trying to convince me to not turn in my letter and trying to convince me to fade. He was telling me, why don't you just stop doing this then, instead of, giving up. And everybody told me that when I told my mother that, and when I told my father that, and I'll go into more detail when I text my aunt and uncle that too. Everybody's like, why are you giving up? Why are you making this choice to turn your back on all of us? And I said, I'm not turning my back on anybody. I said, I'm going to be the one who's everybody turns away from when I walk into a room. I said, I've accepted that fact. Just because I've accepted the fact that you are going to treat me like this and disrespect me for the rest of my life, then I'm not giving up on you guys, because I still love you no matter what. And I told my mother and my father that both. I said, you guys are my parents. That's never going to change. But I just can't be a part of an organization that hides this and this abuse and these false teachings that are blatantly there. And I tried very, very hard. I did not get argumentative with my father over the phone, but it was very calm and concise conversation that I had with him about everything. He's like, well, like, what are your doubts? What's the reasoning behind this? And things like that. It really caught me off guard. The way he kind of went about things. He wasn't forcing me to stay in at all. And I kind of went through, teachings, false teachings, and teachings of the past, things like that. 607, and we were stuck on 607 for like an hour and a half talking about that, just because there's so much behind it, and unless you do the research, you have no idea. And his final argument to me was, well, Jerusalem, did not stop burning until 607. It might have been destroyed in 587, but it wasn't done burning until 607.
But 607 comes before 587, and because it counted down.
Oh yeah, it did count down. So yeah, it didn't stop burning in 607 instead of 20 years later. But it was like, where do you, get this from? And there wasn't much evidence. And he was trying to pull scriptures here and there. And I'm like, one of the real things that started waking me up while I was still doing Zoom meetings and things like that was the scriptures. I'd heard on one of John Cedar's videos, they pull scriptures from out of their ass to fit in with their talks.
Oh, yeah.
And I started like looking at that. I'm like, this scripture, where does this fit in with the rest of it? The 2 paragraphs above, somebody's getting murdered, but this is, God is love, that kind of thing. And it's just like, how do you get here from that point? And yeah, Dad was, he was supportive in a way that he was like, I just want you to make good decisions. And he kind of accepted it to a certain degree. And I feel like he did that because his brother at 16 was disfellowshipped and kicked out of home. And that uncle of mine, I have gotten in contact with before I turned in my letter and let him know my decision. That was the 3rd time I've talked to him my entire life. And I have so much in common with him that it kind of blows my mind because, never growing up being around him and the things that we like and talk about and stuff is awesome. So I'm so grateful that I have him a part of my life again. And I feel so bad for, shunning him for 19 years of my life. But not knowing any better,
Yeah. We did what we thought was right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So Dad, towards the end of the conversation, was kind of accepting it. It was just like, make good decisions. We'll always be here if you need anything. That's what he said. So that was a little reassuring, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm still gonna be shunned. I'm not gonna have communication with them at all. So that was Friday night. I went to bed at about 3:00 in the morning, got to work at 7 and sent in my letter, and my mother was up here and she was supposed to come to my house and drop some things off and spend some time here. And I ended up telling her within 10 minutes of her getting here that that I turned in my letter already. Not that it was an option, but I turned in my letter and I was going to be disassociated. And that hit her like a train. It was a very emotional few hours, but I could tell I had kind of the same conversation with her I did with my father about, why I'm leaving, the things behind it. And what doesn't sit well with me and how things were dealt with and all that. And she just kind of sat there with a blank stare the whole time. Like she was just trying to kind of block it out. And I realized that about halfway through, but I'm like, you know what, if she hears anything that I say and it makes sense, please make sense, that kind of thing. So like, I just wasn't argumentative. I didn't kind of push any beliefs. I said, this is just me. This is what I believe and how it goes from here out. And I'm leaving it up to you if, you want to keep in contact with me and things like that. And she's like, well, it's going to be different. And I said, how is it going to be different? I said, what's different about it? Am I not your son after I leave? Is that how this works? She says, you just know it's going to be different. And then she left my house, and that was the last time I spoke to my parents. And later Saturday night, I got a phone call from my uncle after I sent them a text saying I love them and I appreciate everything they've done for me in the last year or so. But I was making them aware that I turned in my letter of disassociation this morning, and he calls me and he's like, "What's going on?" And very aggressive. He's a very scary kind of dude. But he's like, "What's going on? How did you get this way? Like, what is going on in your mind?" And things like that. And I said, "Well, there's a lot of teachings that I disagree with, and past false teachings, things like that." And he's like, "Oh, you've been reading that apostate BS on the internet, haven't you?" Word for word, that's what he said. And he says, "And you can't tell me it wasn't due to the situation in the Kingdom Hall either." And I'm like, he's like, "That's got to be the big factor for you." And I said, "No, it's really not. It's really the teaching thing too. I mean, of course, it's not okay with the abuse happening, but also teachings. Like the whole religion fell apart in a week for me, and that was one of the big things." And he's like, "Oh, you can't BS me on that. You can't lie to me." And I'm just like, whoa! I'm just sitting there listening to him go off on me, telling me that I'm lying for the reason that I'm leaving, and how much of a disgrace I am.
We say it's okay to leave too, just because people are being hurt in the organization and the
Yeah.
organization is callous to that. Wouldn't that be okay? Let's say they were right about everything else,
Yeah.
but still allowing people to be hurt in this way and turning their back on it. It's still messed up.
Yeah.
And you should be just as pissed off about this, uncle,
Yeah.
as anyone
Like,
else.
your son, firsthand what happened to him.
Yeah,
And
but
you choose to sit there and
well,
do
but
not.
he has to, right?
Ah,
He's caught up
yeah.
in it. And so
Yeah.
psychologically, he's got to discount things so that he can maintain the place that he's in.
Yeah.
It's
And
sad.
he occasionally comes into where I work, and will be helped by another person. And I came up behind him the other day and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Hey," and then kind of looked like mad that he said hi. Well, later that night, I got a call from my cousin saying, "Hey, did my dad come in today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he did." He's like, "Yeah, he said you said hi," and he said hi back, and he said, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." That's what he told my cousin, was that he didn't mean to say hello to me.
Not supposed to say hello to you.
I know. And that, well, you're not supposed to greet the Antichrist. So apparently I'm, the Antichrist now, but it just is, it does not sit well with me. And, I still love them because they're family, but it just, yeah, it doesn't sit well.
It's petty and silly.
Exactly.
Is what you see. And you see the ridiculousness of the religion. Also, I just want to point out, isn't it interesting that, when you are a Catholic, a Lutheran, a Baptist, a whatever, and you study with and become one of Jehovah's Witnesses, they're like, look, you have got to write a letter saying that you are not a part of any of those other religions because you need to take a stand, right?
Yeah.
But yet, when it comes your turn to say, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, and I don't want to give tacit approval to the abuse and the narcissism and the pain and the lies of this cult, suddenly you're a monster because you dare to, I remember I said, because some people have asked me before why I disassociated. And, one thing I say is, I took a stand when I went in and I took a stand when I went out. I don't want to ever be associated with Jehovah's Witnesses. Yep. I don't want to be mistaken for one. I want that stank washed off of me, and I want to move on in a way where I can hold my head high. And I believe everyone has to make the determination for themselves as to where they fall on that spectrum, what they can. But for me, what mattered was I got to get that away. I don't like that label, and I need it off of me. I don't want anything to do with it, and I want to take a stand that says, no, I am not one of you, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want that toxic vibe around me anymore. I don't want any of it. I want to be done.
Yep.
And even if that means my family. And
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, they were toxic too,
Yep.
sadly.
Yep.
But yeah, I just didn't want that anymore. So I just find it funny how they always want you to take a stand until you want to take a stand
Until
that
you
they
take
don't
a stand.
want you to
Yeah.
take. Oh, now it's like you all taught me to be this way. You all taught me to take a stand for what's right. I'm going to, and now you're mad.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, it really upset me when I
Yeah.
heard my uncle call me and tell me that I was lying for the reason. And I remember telling my dad too. He's like, so, and I'm like, even if I didn't leave, or even if I didn't leave and still live near family, and I tried to fade out, I said, I'm gonna run into somebody, and somebody's gonna be like, oh, how's so and so, and I'm gonna have no idea because that sort of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to be associated with an organization in any means that allows this to happen or treats members this way. I cannot, in good conscience, sit here and let this go by with my knowledge. I can't. I physically can't. And he's like, well, and I I respect that. So that was decent, but still challenging at the same time for sure.
Yeah, because you know the eventuality, that I respect that only goes so far.
Hmm.
I respect that, but I respect Jehovah more, or I
More.
respect the organization more, right? And in the end, though, you have to live your life. Jehovah's Witnesses taught us integrity, right? But the integrity they taught us was integrity to Jehovah's Witnesses.
Absolutely.
This is a matter of personal integrity. This leaving Jehovah's Witnesses for a lot of us is one of the first times in our lives that we get to say, no, this is who I am. And we get to take a stand for it. It's one of the first times in our lives that we really take a stand for something that's purely us, that we decided,
Yep.
instead of something we were taught or told to take a stand for.
Hmm.
And so, you are the one who has to live with this for the rest of your life. You made a decision based on who you are and in your personal integrity. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a shame they can't do that, but that's just, there's a lot there
Yeah.
psychologically as to why that can't happen yet. But we, never know over time.
Yeah.
So then you were announced on that Tuesday, I think you said, and then did anything change after that, or?
I did not attend the Sunday Zoom, and I did not attend the Tuesday night Zoom. I kind of wanted to record it being announced, but I didn't want to have to sit there, and I kind of wanted to see everybody's reaction, to be honest with you, because it came out of the blue. I mean, I was, helping out with these Zoom meetings and striving, and then all of a sudden, in an instant, dropped. And I asked my cousin, I said, hey, like, what was everybody's reaction to that being announced? And he says, oh, everybody just sat there kind of blank faced and kind of surprised. I said, yeah, I can see why. But yeah, I was not attending either of those. I was done with it at that point. And I remember waking up Sunday morning, no alarm set, the first Sunday I've slept in so many goddamn years, and being able to just lay there and take time for myself to relax and not be like, I got to be here and do this at this time exactly. And the stress of social anxiety with commenting over Zoom, especially, which is such a weird, I hate Zoom on so many different levels for meetings. It is one of the stupidest things ever. But I'm like, this is the most relaxed and good mentally and physically that I've felt in a long time. And it's something that I definitely wanted. And since then, it's been amazing. I mean, the downtime that I've had to focus on myself and things that you're so like you're told to not focus on when you're in, like, your mental health and your physical health. You got to strive for everything. and make it your number one priority. You got to put Jehovah and the organization first. But, I'm sitting here at 14, 15 years old, depressed out of my mind, alone with no one that I can really cling to. And you want me to just keep doing that, or do you want me to, live? Because there were some real dark times in my teenage years that I could have just, ended things. And that was where I was sitting at. But I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad I'm where I'm at now, and living the best life that I can now, for sure.
Hashtag best life ever, right?
Best life ever. That was one of the most cringiest things in the organization. Seeing that on somebody's Facebook or Instagram profile, oh my God, it just killed me.
If I know this isn't a question that you had any idea I was going to ask you, but you're 19 years old and you've left the organization and you're on your own. You just alluded to, some of those dark times as a teenager, and you did always have those doubts. A lot of times you see kids who come up on like a Reddit or something like that. They'll be 13, 14 years old and they're awake. Yeah. And they know this is all bullshit. And they know they got to, what are they going to do? They got to put in their time, and it's tough. But you're 19 years old. You're sitting here. You're sitting in your own house that you've bought. You've found a way. Any words of encouragement?
The only thing I can really say is, you got to trust your gut and do what's best for you. No matter what anybody tells you is different, you have to make that decision for yourself. You cannot let somebody else influence the way you're thinking. And that was definitely one of the big things for me, was allowing people to take advantage of me. Really. I mean, take advantage of your thinking. You can't let people do that. You have to think for yourself. And the more people you can meet and the more people you can get out to enjoy, yes, there are bad people in the world, but the amount of good people in the world, there's 8 billion people on this planet, and only 8 million of them are Jehovah's Witnesses. So, pick it up a little bit, meet your neighbors, get out there and really start to meet the people that are, here at the same time on this planet you are, because you have one life, and live it the best you can, and live for yourself, not for anybody else, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that you set a good example there in your work ethic. There may be some for whom, college will be a way out. Mm-hmm. And if that's it, man, if you're young and you've got that chance and that's your way out, go work your ass off. Yeah. and make the most of it. Or if just, secular employment, whatever that is, if that's your way out, go work your ass off at it, apply yourself, and get out. Because here you are sitting at 19 and you did get out. Yep. and you're on your own. And I know it's not that, everyone has different circumstances. I'm not saying just because you did it this way, everyone else can, but there are ways. And if you're willing to work hard at something, you'll find that way. Yep. You'll find that way out. So you've got your new life. What do you enjoy about your life since disassociation? So wait a minute. First of all, when did you disassociate? Let's establish that on the podcast.
I disassociated November 7th, I think is what I said.
Yeah, November 7th, I think is what you said is when you sent in your letter, right?
Yep, November 7th of 2020. I was baptized.
You mean
November 9th. November 9th of 2013.
Okay.
So, yep. That was
2019 when you sent in your letter, right?
2020.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been disassociated and shunned for a few months now.
Oh. Wow. So yeah. You're talking less than a month. Because that you were announced. Okay, yep. I thought you had been out right before the pandemic. So you're saying
no, during the pandemic I woke up and
crap.
left and
I
within
guess
months.
that's the Zoom meetings. Okay,
Yep.
I had that wrong.
Yep.
Wow. So you are fresh,
Yep.
fresh out. Man, congratulations.
Thank you.
Uh, that's apparently even surprising to me on this interview. Uh, that's amazing. I had that timeline wrong in my head. So you then got out basically right before the holidays.
Right
Right around the holidays.
before. Yep. I was fully awake before like Halloween and stuff, but of course, couldn't do anything because I was still in. But yeah, I met my current girlfriend during the pandemic, and we've been dating for about 3 months now, and it's been the absolute best relationship I've ever been in, and it's nice not to be chaperoned. I will tell you that. Being able to spend time with one person and to really get to know them and stuff, and not how they act around other people, is a humongous thing, for sure. But I spent the Christmas with her family and met all them, and such a genuinely nice and loving and caring family, and it it's amazing at how. And I text my uncle this too. I said, "Hey, just celebrated Christmas." He says, "Oh, so no demons came out of the tree or anything like that?" And he was getting a kick out of that. And I'm like, "No, not yet. I was expecting to be struck by lightning by the first present I opened, but nothing happened. Nothing happened. So we're good."
You ever
But
disappointed? Like, I'd like at least one demon. Like, I
yeah,
want to see one.
just
Come
give me
on.
something. Like, come on, a flicker of the light as the trees getting put up. Something, please.
Yeah, yeah. There's got to be something. Reveal
Yeah,
yourselves.
yeah,
It's it's so awesome that you are out and able to talk about it already. And um, what do you? So you've talked a little bit about what you like. You like being able to lay there on a Sunday morning and
oh
have your own thoughts instead
yeah,
of having to go regurgitate someone else's, or be with your girlfriend or celebrate
Mhm.
a holiday and meet people, be open to things. So what do you love? What do you want? You're
Um,
19, you've got your whole life ahead of you. And you may not even know what you want at this point. You may have to,
yeah,
you'll
I have
find
no
things that you
idea.
want as you go, right? But is
Yep.
there anything in the near term? Do you have any goals or anything that you're looking forward to?
I definitely want to get more of a physical job than the current job that I have. I would love to take some sort of college course or schooling of some sort, whether that be a trade job or something like that, an apprenticeship, learn on the job. I would love that. Just something that, I kind of missed out on because I was just doing what paid decent and still gave me time off, things like that. But I can focus on, myself and my relationship and the people around me that I have relationships with. I can build on them way more now because I've got a friend who lives pretty close to me now that I met after I moved up here, and we go out to the bar and have food, and he helped me, fix my plumbing underneath my sink and just things like that, little things. And um, it's been so nice being able to think for myself and to be able to not have to second guess, is what I'm doing going to get me disfellowshipped? Oh my goodness, that sort of thing. And
Man, there's
be able just
some
to,
freedom with being disassociated.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
I don't care, who's watching over my shoulder. I don't
yeah,
have to worry about that anymore.
yep,
I'm just done.
yep.
And
I grew out my beard. I've always wanted to. And I grew it out
freedom
and going
beard.
from there. And I
Love
got
it.
my first tattoo yesterday.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thanks. Yeah, I got my first tattoo yesterday. And
Wow, fresh out of the cults,
oh
fresh
yeah,
tattoo, fresh holidays. That's
oh yeah,
awesome.
everything. It's been genuinely the best last 6 months of my life, waking up and realizing that there's so much more ahead of me. Because I remember prior to that, my plan was to work, to go in service, and to wait for the end to come, because not a chance in hell I was going to college, not anywhere getting a good job that paid good. There's not a chance in my mind. So I was sitting here in this house when I first moved in with my bed on the floor, not even a bed frame yet, sitting here thinking to myself, I'm going to work for the rest of my life until I die and be brought into the new system. that is all that was going through my mind. And after I woke up, I'm like, holy shit, I can do so much more with myself, and, you know, try and make the world that I live in the best possible for me, and to make that impression on others. And that is my biggest goal.
I love that. It's not just about you; it's about others as well. You seem like you've got a tremendously good head on your shoulders. You've really worked hard. Obviously, you've got a great work ethic at work, but you've worked hard to figure out who you are and how you believe, and what you feel about things, and you know, you'll continue that growth process, I'm sure, throughout your life. And I just appreciate you, you know, being so willing to be open, and to share all this at such a young age. And I'm just so, uh, you know, I left at 38 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You got 20 years on, or 19 years on me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as far as, you know, years that you can spend, you know. Obviously, by the time I left at 38, I'd developed certain tools. I had some more life experience, different things
Mm-hmm.
like that you'll have ahead of you. But it just bodes really well for you. You're free. You're out of a cult. I'm sorry that your family is left behind. That's their choice for now, and maybe someday they'll make another. But I'm so glad that you got out. You've got your uncle. Sounds like you've got some good people around you, just some good, genuine individuals that you've met on the journey. And I'm just excited for you and what life has for you.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I'd like to read that letter.
Yeah, go ahead. I know you've got a letter you'd like to read.
Yeah, I received this letter about a week after. No, excuse me. The letter's dated November 10th. It is a front, back, and front 3-page letter from my grandmother.
And now she's a witness, correct?
She is very much a witness. Very, very, very firm, strong
And this
believer.
would have been right after you had submitted your DA letter, correct?
Correct, yep. This would have been that Tuesday that I was announced. She wrote this letter and sent it in to me. So, yeah, if I laugh, it is because I genuinely think this is a joke letter. It is. I mean, I can't believe what is being said.
I totally understand.
So it starts off, Dear Isaiah, first line, when I heard the news from your mom that a death in the family had occurred, it brought tears to both of our faces. For one to disassociate oneself versus one to be inactive is a total change for all family members. I lost a loving and kind grandson. I hope you will recall all the good times we had together, when you lived with me and when you came to my house and stayed, and when I took you sledding and out in service, etc. Those were happy times, or at least I thought they were. You have always had a special place in my heart, and Grandpa's too. When you made your decision to disassociate yourself, did you think about how many people you would affect? Jehovah, Jesus, your parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, and brothers and sisters in the congregation. It's not just about you. Please, before you get too deep with those people of the world, think about what you have learned to be the truth in God's word. You owe it to yourself to learn that people of the world set their own standards of right and wrong. They don't, this is really hard to read. They don't worship Jehovah or follow the directive by Jesus and the faithful and discreet slave, the Octopope. Don't believe negative things about Jehovah's people. Do research. And thinking through this, reading through this at the same time, I was like, oh, trust me, I've done a hell of a lot of research, a lot more.
I was struck by those people on the outside. They have their own, they determine what's right or wrong for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember reading this. I just was in disbelief.
Yes.
At what was being written. But
very dramatic with the death in the family.
There's still some more to go here. Okay. And it's just, let's see here. Do research. You learn where to go. Satan wants to draw those who are in the truth away from it. Why? He knows his time is short and I can't read this. And false religion in time and political systems are coming to an end. We all make mistakes. Please be humble. Rethink what decision you made. Jehovah won't, Jehovah hasn't forgotten you or given up on you. Please pray to Jehovah to keep you thinking in line with his purpose and will and what others have said or told you to believe. Remember, those who have left the truth are not going to tell you the truth. They're going to mislead you and put negative ideas and thoughts in your head. You are smarter than that. There is an article I would like you to read in an Awake magazine, April 22nd, 1989, page 12, entitled, Something Worse Than AIDS. A person who wasn't happy in the truth, and later what happened to him. Remember, there is time to rethink, to think matters over. It is now before it is too late. Jehovah can and will forgive you if you are truly repentant, and you will need to get help from the elders who love you. We all lost a loving family member today. Love, Grandma. So that is the letter that I received from her very shortly after being announced.
Any response to that?
What the fuck? Besides that, I mean, it really hurts me to see that because of a decision I made, a belief, because I can't, blindly follow faith like they can, that what I'm doing is going to end up killing me in the end. I cannot get that through my thick skull, I guess, that, somebody could just turn their back on somebody who've been in my life 19 years, that it's just unfathomable for me to even realize that, because I couldn't imagine being in that position to be writing that letter to my grandson or whatever, it's just mind-boggling. And for anybody who's going through the same thing or debating on it, again, you gotta really think for yourself here. There's so much more in this world that people don't realize, that are stuck in a controlling and mind-altering cult. There is so much more, and there are people that no matter what will love you unconditionally. And if that's what you strive for, then you'll find it, because there's a lot to weigh in when you make a big decision like this, especially when you're younger. If you're going to leave at 18, if you're not baptized, I can only advise you to make decisions when you turn 18. Do not do them beforehand, because until you grasp the full meaning of what it means to get baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or to put your life into any cult for that matter, is you have to understand the agreement that you are signing your life away to. And that is one thing I regret big time, was not understanding fully what baptism meant at 13 years old. What giving my life to an organization and losing all of my family at 19 years old. Nothing can prepare you for that moment when you hear from your family last, or you hear from your friends the last time. You have no mental capacity to prepare yourself for that. And when it hits, it hits. But as long as you have the people that really care about you and love you you can make it through anything.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And, once you make it through something like this, there's not much else that can, obviously there's a lot that still can shake you. Let's not tempt fate.
Yeah.
There's still plenty of horrible things that can happen in life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big one. And, what I thought of, just listening to your grandma's letter there was just, how sad it is that, her letter, um, it was shaming, it was manipulative in ways like, what about us? It wasn't about you. It was all about her. It was all about the family. It was all about Jehovah's Witnesses, but none of it was truly about like, hey, you know what, Isaiah? If this makes you happy and this makes you feel good, then I'm happy for you. I'm happy that you have found things that work for you in life.
Yeah.
It's not about you, it's always about them. Jehovah's Witnesses are a narcissistic organization. They can only see other human beings as a reflection of them. And if that other person is not mirroring back to them what they want them to be, done. And all the dramatics of we lost a grandson, we lost a family member, all of that stuff. You see how overly dramatic it is just because you don't believe the way they do anymore.
Yeah.
They've lost you. Not they're going to lose you at some indeterminate time in the future when Jehovah comes at Armageddon and destroys you. Like if that's what they believe, whatever. But
Yeah.
like they could still have a relationship with you until then. Instead, because in the early 1980s, I believe it was around when Ray Franz left, they made the organization decided, at new light, we got to shut this guy up, to shun people who disassociated, because they didn't always shun people who
I think it was 1976, the disfellowshipping and shunning arrangement was.
Is that when it was?
I think it was late 70s, mid 70s, late 70s
Okay.
that it was fully initiated.
But they didn't shun those who left or disassociated for a long time. But because the organization made a rule, again, based on their own garbage interpretation of what I would say is a garbage book. Because they decided to do that, therefore your family members can have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
If the organization tomorrow said, hey, you know what? If people want to disassociate, we're not going to shun them.
Yeah.
Then suddenly your family could talk to you. So it's not about your family lost you. Your family's following the random assertions of a cult, which is apt to change its mind at any moment.
Absolutely.
And because of that, they refuse to talk to you, and they're trying to pin it all on you.
Yep, for sure.
When it's really all on them. And that's the point, is that, I listen to that, and I'm just sad that your grandma has given her entire life psychologically to something that makes it to where she can't make her own decisions anymore. And she is depriving herself of probably what will be the best years of her grandson's life, and actually seeing her grandson for who he really is, because she only wants to see him a certain way. I feel the same about myself. My parents saw me one way through my depression, my anxiety, my suicidal ideations they didn't even know of, inside this cult where I was super depressed and negative and all of this, and they've never seen the best side of me, and it's sad. But that's on them. It's not on you.
Yep. And that's
and so it's just a shame. And but you have a whole life ahead of you to go live.
Nope.
And they can choose to stay small, and you will continue to grow. And you will have unfortunately at 19 years old grown beyond where your parents and grandparents and other people can go. They can't go there. That's sad.
No, I think what kind of upsets me too is the fact that I made the decision to turn in a letter. But either way, it's still announced that you are disfellowshipped, or that you are no longer one of. I really wish they would announce that separate, because I feel like these people, these brothers and sisters, think that I did something wrong that got me to that point, that I was disfellowshipped for. Not that I was, thinking for myself, because the organization does not want you thinking for yourself. In Watchtowers, every paragraph, your question, the answer's right there. Why do you think you can highlight one or two sentences without looking for anything? Because it's right there in front of you. They control the way you think. They control
That's
everything you
why the
do.
decision. That's why they announce it the same.
Exactly.
But that's also part of letting go
Yep.
of care for what a bunch of unreasonable cultists who are not known for making good decisions in life,
Yep.
not needing their validation anymore, is something is kind of a decision that you make when you disassociate in a
Mm-hmm.
way, because it's now time to let that go.
Yep.
And the same goes with that decision, right? Like, they can think I'm in this fellowship. I hope all Jehovah's Witnesses, I hope that you think, because the first thing they always go to is it's got to be a sexual sin, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Yep.
But yet I live in the same area. They've seen my wife and I out.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we are swingers. And we go to a swingers club every weekend. That's our new
Right after service.
yeah, after service, or we service things in a different way now. And that's what we do on the weekends, because we no longer serve Jehovah. We have clearly gone into that lifestyle, but that's why
Yeah.
you still see my wife and I together.
Mm-hmm.
Not because we love each other and are in a committed relationship. Honestly,
Yeah.
if you want to
Yeah.
go swing, do your thing, and it's none of my damn business. But like, it's just funny. They will always find it's got to be a sexual thing, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'll tell you what, while my wife and I are swinging, you harbor your molesters in the
Yep.
congregation and feel good about that.
Yep.
Know, and know that you have the truth.
Yeah.
So I'll absolve them of any inclination that I might have gone on to live a better life. I'm clearly a debauched, horrible human being that is doing terrible things now.
Exactly.
And it's just so dumb. It gets to the ridiculous nature of the way they view humans, humanity, people that leave. And so that's the point at which there's another point, I think, that you get to where I think you have levels of freedom that come after you disassociate. And another one that you do eventually get to is where you don't care what they think on any level. I know that there are people who say I'm demonic, and I find that hilarious.
Yeah, me too.
So think what you want. That's okay, because I don't care what you think about me any more than I care about, something I coach a lot of people, and a lot of people are concerned about what, people are going to think of them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, because our whole lives we were brought up. I mean, it's trauma bonding in a large way, but we were our codependency. We were taught to care about what other people's feelings were, in a way that we tried to manage them and keep everyone else happy and keep up appearances and all of that. And so there's just a point where we do care about what people think of us a lot, and there is. Something I often tell people is, I remember one day I was walking down the street and there was a homeless man who, sadly had schizophrenia. And he's yelling at me from across the street, 666. He's pointing at me. I'm the devil, blah, blah, blah. And, I feel for the guy. He's clearly got a severe mental illness. But on the other hand, I'm not going to take any of what he says seriously.
Yeah.
And I see Jehovah's Witnesses the same way. We're in the land of a pandemic with a virus that we're all talking about. They have a virus. Jehovah's Witnesses have a virus, and it permeates everything they do. And it has made them very mentally and emotionally sick. And so I can't give any credence to what they think of me or care what they think of me anymore, because it's the equivalent of that guy on the street yelling at me that I'm the devil or whatever,
Yeah.
And frankly, they probably would say the same thing. So, I can't give any credence to that. It's not real. And they believe in fairy tales, and I'm just not worried about that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I first woke up and I started kind of doing things that I wanted to do for me before I turned in my letter. I was like going out and doing stuff that I've never done before, and was enjoying it thoroughly, but always in the back of your mind, you got like, oh, somebody's gonna, find out and I'm gonna go the wrong way, that kind of thing. And then as soon as I put in my letter, I mean, the day of, I just felt the relief of, holy shit, I'm free. Like, I don't have to worry about what anybody thinks of me. I don't have to worry about things that are being said behind my back in this Kingdom Hall. And living in such a small town, anywhere, if you have a congregation any size, there's rumors. Every congregation has it. Any congregation I've ever been to has rumors, and you hear about every single one of them. And I can't imagine what's going about me, but if I ever come across one and hear it, I'm just gonna laugh. I'm just gonna laugh because I don't care what they think. I'm me. I know exactly what I did, why I did it. I don't have to worry about any of that. And I don't know. It's just it's funny to me at this point. But
It is. Well, the beautiful part is now you know who you are and you know what you stand for. You're standing on your own 2 feet now. Again, back to the personal integrity piece, and now you get to form your own identity. There was a loss or a death of one identity. Now you get to have your own identity. You're Isaiah,
yeah,
and you get to just go be the best Isaiah you can be, or the Isaiah you want to be, whoever or whatever that is. And um, it's not up to anybody else to determine that course, and you actually get to choose that. And so I just hope you keep growing as an individual, and I just want to see you happy and have the best life you can have. That's what I want for everybody that leaves. You've cut those ties, and so now it's time for you to fly and be free. And I wish you all the best.
I appreciate it. Absolutely.